it's weird. North Beach, a lot of the city doesn't, because I would run around other parts of the city. But North Beach feels very much the same. If I need to like remember why I moved back and how much I love it here, the magic for me is here.
That was tattooer Taylor Nicols. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from tattoo artists, volunteers, artists, and San Franciscans from all walks of life, telling stories, sharing personal histories, and trying to put into words what makes this city so special. Welcome to episode 42, part 1. In this podcast, Taylor talks about growing up in North Beach. Her dad was quite the man about town, and she'll share some stories of bars and restaurants she frequented with him. She ends this episode talking about the changes she's seen in the city over the last decade or so, but she leaves room for hope for the future. Here's Taylor.
So Nicols is actually my grandmother's maiden name. It's just like I use it for work, but I am still a coffee. Mm-hmm. That's like the family name, I guess. Mm-hmm. My grandpa was a coffee. My dad was a coffee.
And you're a what generation?
So I honestly I don't know if I can 100% nail it down, but fifth is what I know.
Wow. So great.
Fifth. Great, yeah, because great-grandpa was I believe my great-grandmother Ethel was born here. So yeah, I should be great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know any of their stories?
I do. I don't actually know a ton of theirs, but I know like stuff from my grandma and all of that. So I'm a younger... So my dad had my sister and then me. So we're two different separate generations apart. Mm. So it's actually even more. But my grandpa was Benjamin Mifflin, and my great-grandpa, and my great-grandma was Ethel Mifflin, and they had 9 daughters.
Is that all?
Yeah. They lived on Potrero Hill.
Wait, 9 daughters
it was still Goat Hill.
And no sons?
No sons. One of them died very young. Actually, 2 of them did. So there were 7 girls that grew up together. That's still a lot.
That's a lot. I'm sorry, I talked over you. You said Potrero Hill back when it was known as...
Goat Hill. It was Goat Hill. And there are pictures that I've seen, which is amazing. And then all of their 7 daughters, all had families of their own in the 40s. My grandmother was the second oldest, Joyce, and she had 3 daughters and 1 son. So there was my dad was the first boy. So he was...
that's a lot of females.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And there's women, my dad had 2 girls, like our family, it was like 7 women all had 4 or 5 kids, most of them
awesome.
girls, who then had most of them girls, so a lot of, my sister has 3 girls.
Wow. So it's just not skipping any generations.
On my dad's side, it is women.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of us.
So that got us to you being born.
So there's lots of us. Most don't live in San Francisco anymore, but.
Do you know where you were born?
I was born at General. Brought home immediately over to Union and Taylor. I'm actually named after Taylor Street. Oh. Because my parents couldn't decide, so I wound up just being named after where
awesome.
I lived, where I was conceived, as my dad grossly put it a couple times.
Okay,
but, yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's spelled differently because my mom, it was 19 and thought that was cool, but 20, I guess, by the time she had me. But
right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm guessing you don't remember your birth, so let's let's go to,
believe it or not,
some of your earliest memories. And you grew up in North Beach?
Yeah, I grew up in North Beach, and I definitely, as a kid, lots of cool stuff happened growing up in North Beach. Lots of adults around, but there were also tons of children. There's not that many children I see running around anymore because people move away because they can't afford it. But there were so many kids running around North Beach, and we were allowed, I was really young, and I was allowed to go around the corner. I could stay on the block, but I couldn't cross the street. So there was tons of us just running around, going to like the corner store and buying candy. And my dad was a man about town, so I spent a lot of time being kind of like sitting with the waitresses at whatever bar and like coloring while my dad was
Can you
partying.
Name some of those bars?
So my dad dated almost every waitress at North Beach Pizza, which is no longer on the corner of Union and Grant. But they would give me $1 so that I could run next door and I would buy candy, and I would sit on the stoop and eat candy while my dad was in there just flirting his butt off. There are tons of pictures of me at Gino's and Carlo's when I was a kid. But specifically, he really liked Tosca, and Tosca was the only bar that as a child I was not allowed in. It was the only one. So he would take me across the street to City Lights Books, and the downstairs was where the kids section was then. And he could see me, and he would pay the person working at the counter, because the counter's right in front of the door, so they see who comes, to make sure I didn't leave for an hour. And I would just sit downstairs by myself and read. Yeah. And when he came back after an hour, if I had like behaved myself, I could buy whatever book I wanted. Oh. So I had a really impressive book collection when I was a kid.
That's awesome.
So it was basically my library. Because it was open until midnight or later.
Other bars, because this isn't true anymore. You could go into bars.
I went in every bar.
And just hang out with your dad.
Tosca I wasn't allowed to. And I think I don't know what, it was more of like a grown-up opera kind of bar anyway, and I think there might have been a lot of cops maybe that hung out there too, so that might have something to do with it. But I was allowed in every bar. I went into Lost and Found when I was a kid. I went in the saloon. I went in every bar, and I had to behave myself. I sat at the end and I drank Roy Rogers.
I was gonna, Shirley Temples and Roy Rogers. I was Roy Rogers,
nice. But I didn't get to drink soda normally. So at the bar I did. So I was I do my homework at the bar, always, like late. That was just normal. And I wasn't the only kid. Like, I was a lot of times the only kid, but right. I wasn't. Like, you would see tons of kids at bars, which you can't do now. But to be fair, like, it wasn't like they were drinking or, it was just a couple kids sitting while their parents hung out. It wasn't weird.
And a Roy Rogers is grenadine and Coke, right?
Yeah, it's a Shirley Temple, but
and it's Cherry Coke before there was Cherry Coke.
100%, yeah.
I remember when they came out with Cherry Coke, and I was like, what?
Yeah, and Cherry Coke is the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, and lots of restaurants too. There's a lot of drinking in restaurants. My dad was a big eater, so you would like sit for a meal, but then everyone would bring a bottle of wine. So you'd be there for every Saturday at Cafe Sport. We were there for 4 or 5 hours, just drinking. If there was any wine left over, he would hide it, like behind, because there's all kinds of stuff all over that place. So he'd hide it, and then the next time you'd have lunch, if they ran out of wine, he would get up on a chair and find a bottle of wine stashed behind something. And so kids would be sitting there with their parents while that was happening. We'd just be coloring and
What other, besides Cafe Sport, what other restaurants?
So I did grow up basically in Tomaso's. We ate there almost every night of my life. My dad dated one of the daughters many moons ago, and me and Giorgio, which is one of the sons, he's my age now, but we were kids then, we were the same age, so we hung out all the time. My dad had a custom bassinet made for me that went under the table at Tomaso's. I didn't have home-cooked meals unless it was basically one of my sort of godmothers would do Sunday dinner, and we would do that. But I didn't have home-cooked meals until I was maybe 16. I moved in with my mom.
Because you didn't need them.
We ate at Tomaso's every night. Or Il Palaio, which I love, the chicken place. Oh my God, it's so good. But Tomaso's is still, I had my birthday party there every year of my life, and it was almost all adults.
Yeah.
The whole restaurant.
Does it still feel the same? That place specifically?
Some stuff. It's weird. North Beach, a lot of the city doesn't, because I would run around to other parts of the city. But North Beach feels very much the same. If I need to remember why I moved back and how much I love it here, the magic for me is here. There's a couple other neighborhoods. Chinatown has some of the magic, but magic, I guess. But for me, my personal stuff is getting a sandwich and sitting in the park. You can do that, and there's not 9 million people in Washington Square. You can still go sit at Molinari's and get you can do, there's no Starbucks or Pete's, or it still feels the same. There's new stuff, but a lot of it's still the way it felt when I was a kid, and there's it's a locals neighborhood still. It is still, it's locals only, and you can move here and become a local in North Beach pretty quick, but they have to feel like you could be one to let you be one.
That's Ange.
It's awesome.
And my friend and someone who's been on the podcast before
it's great.
Did that and is very much a North Beacher now.
And I still run into people. Yeah, if you're the right kind of person. And it's not about how you look. It's how you act. You have to be able to hang out and roll with the punches and not be. But there's still so much cool little things here. There's an artist, Winston Smith, who I adore, and he did the Dead Kennedys logo and a bunch of Green Day collage art, but he's done a lot for major bands. And he has a studio in North Beach in an alleyway that is a whole underground pile of cool stuff that still happens here. So yeah, I love North Beach.
Yeah, no, it was totally your suggestion that we record here.
Yeah.
So it must still mean
comfortable.
A lot. Yeah.
And I don't live in the city anymore. Another person that can't afford it. But South San Francisco, I actually had, when my aunts and great aunts had all those kids, a lot of them moved where they could buy houses. So South City, actually, I've had family that's lived there a long time too. A lot of them moved to Marin, and I think pockets of Marin have a lot of that magic still. Mm-hmm. You know, Mill Valley, it's still just Mill Valley. So
it's like pushed out, but like still staying as close as you can.
Yeah, still trying to like keep it. Yeah, you know. Outer Mission has some of that vibe for sure. You know. When I lived in the outer, well, I didn't live in the outer. I guess I lived on 25th, but it was awesome because it was locals. It was locals home, and it was like a cute little nice neighborhood. It was like right off the beaten path. It was 25th and York.
Oh
awesome.
yeah,
26th
kind
and
of
York.
out by you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Well, actually, on that note, so take us out of North Beach now. In your life?
So
what
I
happened?
moved. We had a really tiny apartment in North Beach, but I wanted to live by the beach. So, got an apartment. My first real apartment was $1,000. We thought it was so expensive. This would have been 2002. It was an in-law, and it was amazing. And we had the entire backyard, and it was the Outer Sunset, or the Outer Richmond. I love the Richmond too. The Richmond very much feels like that too. That strip of Clement is still like all of Sunset, Judah.
You can say magical.
It's magical.
I actually like that
because it is
word.
magical. I still like North Beach. I do it, and I still go out to Balboa out there. The Balboa Theater is my favorite, and there's a cafe out there called Simple Pleasures that is kind of terrible in the best way because it's like ratty and like the sandwiches are so good, but it's like all just people hanging. And I still go there and I get tea.
Weird coincidence.
And I hang out.
The guy whose podcast we published today, he's a musician and he's playing at Simple Pleasures tonight.
Yeah, and you can go there any given night and see a guy that's an awesome, like, either a rad transplant or a local, like, play or speak or perform in whatever way. And the theater has still managed to hold it together, which I'm so impressed by.
Yes.
Because we've lost. That was my favorite when I was a kid. But it was going to all those cool theaters.
And they still have working console video games.
Yeah, that place is awesome. But yeah, I moved, so I lived out there. I've lived all over the city because that's kind of what happens. You find an apartment, and then you get a new roommate, and then like, oh, this place is cheaper, or oh, so-and-so's boyfriend's moving in, or so I've lived, oh my God, I've lived in North Beach, I've lived in the Marina, I've lived in the Outer Sunset, Inner Richmond, Outer Richmond. I lived on 36th, then at 30th, like around the corner. You know, like, and then I lived in the Outer Mission, which I adored.
That was 25th in York, you said?
26th in York, actually. Yeah. And yeah, Pops was the thing in the early 2000s because Malia, who owns it, she owned it. Now she owns Parkside. But that was kind of like, you know, all the like misfits and punk rockers and bike messengers and Tuffy. Yeah, Tuffy.
We've got some good. Yeah,
yeah,
Tuffy,
and Pops was like, I was so busy working because I wanted to be a tattooer. And I knew that I got a job in a tattoo shop when I was 18 years old, just scrubbing tubes, which is like the basic, most menial, it's like janitorial work basically. And then I had a million jobs because I was going to art school and paying for stuff. And I just slowly started working there more and more and more. And I just decided I wanted to do it. And so I was always working really hard. So I would be at Pops or I would be at whatever, but it was like, I always had to like go home, go to work, or like, so it's
you were the responsible one.
Yeah, but 6 days a week maybe, there was always the one, you know?
Sure.
And that was when I was young, so it was like everyone was losing their minds, and I had like my head kind of down. And then as soon as I hit like, I don't know, like as soon as I'd been tattooing for a couple years, I was like, oh yeah, now I can party, and then everything closed down.
Right.
And then like, you know, Pops got sold, like a lot of things, a lot of places changed. Some are still there and awesome, but it's kind of it was weird to see. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I missed like 2000. I missed the bubble bursting because as soon as I was like, okay, like I've got it all together now, I can go out and do stuff. It's like a lot of it, like the next boom came.
Yep.
You know, the
window closed.
The window closed. But that's not true though. That's like I feel that way sometimes, but it's totally like you can walk around and find all this cool stuff still.
Yeah.
Like this city's still. I think sometimes people that have lived here forever, I see this a lot. People that have lived here forever are like, oh, it's not as cool as it used to be. But it's like, okay, sure, we know that, but it's still cooler than almost anywhere else. Like, we know what it used to be, but we also aren't those people either. So maybe we're not 20 going to Crowbar, you know, like it's closed, but I'm not probably wouldn't go there even if it was open, you know, like it's like.
I think the other part of that is like, well, but do something about it.
Well, and that's what I've noticed that's
just
super cool lately. Is like, yeah, people are complaining, but I think with everyone getting pushed out and like new scenes have been created in like Oakland and stuff like that, but it's like all of a sudden people are going back to the places they used to because that's all that's left. So you don't have the choice to go to 37 places. You have to go to, you know, if you want to see your friends, you have to go to Bender's, you have to go to Boozland, you have to go to Lucky 13, you have to go to the places that like have been there or have staff that has been there forever. And so it's creating these cool little scenes again. And I feel like it's almost out of like, you have to, because you can't go anywhere else because it's all become a gin bar, you know?
Right.
Like, I don't need to go to
a
Dr.
gym.
Jekyll themed gin bar, like... Yeah. Or a gym, oh my God.
Or a gym.
A climbing gym.
My laundromat turned into like a Pilates.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm leaving the mission. That's my sign. I'm done.
And I remember, so I moved to Denver. And before, so I lived I was trying to find an apartment. And we wound up having to live in Oakland. And that apartment was actually amazing. And I adore Lake Merritt. But I hadn't really hung out. Like I've always worked in the city. Always, always, always. But I hadn't spent too much time. And then I moved to Denver, and I came back, and it was Christmas, and we were doing like a Secret Santa thing. And I wanted to get, many years ago, someone got my boss a light-up Lamborghini clock, and it's in our bathroom at the shop, and it's the most commented on thing. And she got it from one of the Mexican, like, stuff stores. So we went and had breakfast at St. Francis, which I recommend everyone should always go to, always. And we were walking down the street, and in between York and Mission on 24th, which is not a small amount of blocks, that's a ways to walk, there weren't any. There was one, but it was like clothing, and then all the rest of them were closed. One had become an oyster bar, and one was that Wise Sons deli, which is good, but I mean, it was the fact that in the span of 3 years, I couldn't go down 24th Street and find a store that had stuff, which,
right.
You know, I mean, Mission has plenty still, but it's like, it was just such an odd
What 3 years was it?
So that would have been like 2000. So that happened, I believe, in 2014. So it would have been before that. Yeah. Well, that I was looking for stuff like that I hadn't lived around. Like, so I hadn't been
that
around.
Early this decade, few years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
very.
Yep. That's when
and
the change started.
I think we opened the shop in 2009, and there was still, Eric opened it, but there was still like so much stuff and tons. And within the first 4 years we were open, most of my friends moved away.
Right.
Because what were they going to do here?
Right.
Bars were closing, galleries were closing, venues were closing, and people weren't coming here anymore. They were doing cool things. So instead of making something happen here, because it was so expensive to get a space or whatever, it was easier to go to New York. It was easier to go to Austin. Mm-hmm. It was easier to go to Portland. That's Austin, Portland, and New York. Took all my friends.
How did San Francisco become more expensive than New York? Seriously. Anyway, that's another podcast.
And I told people for years, because it was comparable a while ago, and it became more expensive not too long ago. And for years, people have just been like, no, New York's still the most expensive. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
Like, I know people in New York that are paying less, and they got their apartment last year, and I got mine 3 years ago.
That was Taylor Nicols. Check back Thursday, when Taylor will share the story of how she started tattooing. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Find all 90-plus episodes on our website, storiedsf.com. While you're there, please help support us by going to our store page and checking out the various pledge levels. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay current on everything we do. And you can now listen to the podcast on YouTube. If you go there, please subscribe to our channel. If you're on Apple Podcasts, do us a favor and rate and review the show, please. And if you have any feedback or you just want to say hi, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.